Welcome back to the Sunday Standard. Big episode today because I think one of the most interesting situations in the league right now is the Tennessee Titans, not just because of what they've done on the field, but what they're doing as an organization. This feels bigger than a rebuild, like you could argue teams like the Miami Dolphins are currently going through, or one that the New York Jets seem to be in continuously. It seems like a full organizational reset. So we'll break that down, what it actually means and whether it's going to make any sense at all. We'll also run through some key moves that has happened around the league this week. We'll also have the second installment of the Sunday Standard Power Index, teams 27 through 23. And finally, we will finish off with who I think teams will take in picks 16 through 20 in this upcoming draft. Let's get into it.
Welcome to the Sunday Standard.
All right, let's get into it. I want to start with the Tennessee Titans because when you look at everything they've done this offseason, it feels like there's an actual plan behind what they're doing. The spending, the players they've brought in, even the direction as an organization as a whole, it all connects. Now, starting off with the roster, yes, they've spent $275 million, but they've filled holes and gaps in the entire team that needed to be filled if they want to aggressively project upwards towards being a plus 500 team. Wan'Dale Robinson, not a true wide receiver one. However, you add him to the mix with the likes of DK. You maybe go out and you get a player that's still available on the market that has a connection with your head coach in Robert Saleh, and that's Juwan Jennings. He's still available. I think he's a good addition. It gives you another option for Cam. They've gone and got Franklin Myers. They needed that help on the defensive edge to rush the quarterback. He had 7.5 sacks, 14.5 over the last 2 years on a very good defensive Denver Broncos. You brought in a corner in Alontae Taylor. You could argue he's potentially a little bit of a liability. However, he's a great pass rusher. He can sort of get stuck and miss tackles where need be, but I think you bring him into a system with a Robert Saleh that is so great on the defensive side of the ball. He can certainly learn, hopefully just in the one position. He has been moved around a lot between the slot and the outside. So I think long term, over the next couple of years, Alontae Taylor becomes a really solid cornerback. They've also brought in Austin Schlottman from most previously the New York Giants. So there's the connection with Daboll, their new offensive coach there at Tennessee. He's a veteran. He's 30 years old, brings a lot of experience from a bunch of different organizations. It's organizations that his career has taken him. They can organize that O-line and help Cam Ward again progress into his sophomore season and improve, hopefully allowing him a little further time there in the pocket to allow him to get the ball out. 55 sacks last year, as to be expected, but the fact that he continued to play throughout the whole season, managed to stay injury-free, says a lot about, I guess, the type of player that Cam Ward is. And finally, you also got for that offensive line a player in Volson from Cincinnati last year at the right guard position. Also a really, really good get. So to build out that offensive line, hopefully, again, giving Cam a little bit further time in the pocket. The organization as a whole is trending in the right direction. Now, I say that because next year, Nissan Stadium, $2.1 billion stadium there in Tennessee. They've just rebranded the whole organization, paying homage to the Houston Oilers, who then obviously became the Tennessee Oilers, and then in 97 and then in 99 went to become what we know now as the Tennessee Titans. So it's bigger than football. They're reinventing the franchise. They're paying homage to their history. Just everything here is connected, and it feels like a really good time to be a Tennessee Titans fan, which I'm slowly becoming. Now, this is not obviously all possible without the likes of Cam Ward. Now, Cam Ward is an interesting story as a whole. So let's start back from his high school days. East Texas, in a team that plays a very run-heavy offense. I think he only had about 7 touchdowns in his senior year or junior year. So a 0-star recruit coming out of high school. He did, however, get a scholarship to go to Incarnate Word there in San Antonio. Obviously, at this time, when he was coming up through the collegiate system, was at the start of COVID, and he only had about 2,200 yards in what I believe was a shortened season that year when it got pushed to spring as well for them to play. So only the 2,200 yards of offense through the air. However, his breakout year was his second year there in Incarnate Word, where he had 648 yards, 47 touchdowns, and only 10 interceptions. South Lone Conference Offensive Player of the Year. And then, as many players are doing these days with the transfer portal, he decided to transfer. Now, he did follow his head coach from Incarnate Word, who had then moved on to Washington State to be their offensive coordinator. So 2 years there at Washington State for Cam, 7-5 and then 5-7. Not a great return, average at best. Had some decent yardage, but nothing that was overly impressive in the grand scheme of things when it comes to Cam's, I guess, projection in the draft. Now, he did go and say that he was going to go into the draft, the 2024, obviously quite a heavy quarterback draft class first round with 5 players going. And again, with where they sort of saw Cam Ward's ability, he was going sort of mid-third to 4th round, and probably be a backup for most of his career unless he found himself into a position where he had the ability to start, and maybe then it would have been a whole new story. However, he backed himself and transferred to the Miami Hurricanes, and the rest is history. 4,313 yards down there in Miami, a 10-3 season, only just missed out and getting into that conference championship by about 4 points, I believe. So still had a 10-3 record. He now has the school record in passing yards. He led the country with 39 touchdowns. He was 4th in the Heisman. He won the Davey O'Brien and the Manning Award as best college quarterback of the season. Then last year's draft comes and he is the number 1 pick and finds himself there in Tennessee. Now, I like to think of Cam Ward of being a good feel story about his willingness and hard work to make it to become a first-round pick, let alone the first pick. So I compare him to another player that didn't have the greatest entry into the collegiate system, and that is Josh Allen. Josh Allen, again, not much, if any, eyes on him as a high school player, essentially also a 0-star recruit, had to go through the JUCO system and then eventually transferred into the Wyoming system. Again, was going to go in the 2017 draft. However, things and his overall draft stock wasn't there after some pretty decent numbers there in Wyoming. However, again, also backed himself, went back to college and just balled out and did enough for him to then go 7th in the 2018 NFL draft there to Buffalo after they moved up from pick 12 to take him there. So in the context of that thing, had he gone to the 2017 draft, realistically speaking, looking at that draft, you could say he was probably second best out of that, would have been second best coming out of that draft, obviously behind Patrick Mahomes, but Trubisky, who is now the number 2 there in Tennessee, is his backup, was also in that draft and went number 2, I believe. So it says a lot about Josh Allen as a player. And then you compare that to the same draft class that Cam Ward was initially going to go to, and that's the 2024 draft, where you've got players like Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, JJ McCarthy, and Michael Penix. Realistically, in the scheme of things, you would probably put him 4th best. I would put him well above JJ and Penix there in that draft class. So I think, again, he's projecting upwards. I think he's sort of in that realm of Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels obviously had that fantastic rookie season, a bit of dip, a bit of injury. So interesting to see where he projects towards in his sophomore season as these other 5 guys head into their junior season. And not only is it the players, and obviously it takes more than just Cam Ward to create a difference. And that also brings me to the coaching. Now, obviously I've already touched on Daboll and Salah, but the development of Cam Ward is incredibly important. And this all connects again because Daboll was Josh Allen's offensive coordinator in Buffalo when they brought him in from 2018 to 21. So now he's there with Cam Ward. So we certainly saw Josh Allen from his freshman or first year in the league certainly improve, I think, by about 12 or 13% in completion rate with Daboll there as his offensive coordinator. So I think we can certainly say that some of the quarterbacks that have been under Daboll's systems has certainly improved over time. So good get there from Tennessee. And then obviously Robert Saleh. And interesting, again, it's his second head coaching position, previously with the New York Jets, got fired there and then moved over to be the defensive coordinator there in San Francisco. This is his second head coaching position, and you could argue that some of the best coaches have come out of the league in their second role, that being Bill Belichick, who was with the Cleveland Browns as their head coach first, then went to the Patriots, created a dynasty. Andy Reid, one of the best coaches in the NFL system and has been since he was obviously there in Philadelphia for quite a large tenure and then moved straight over to the Kansas City Chiefs and has also sort of started to build something incredible there with the likes of Patrick Mahomes. And finally, another that has connections across the board here, and that is Mike Vrabel. Obviously had his first head coaching job there in Tennessee, has moved on to the Patriots as their head coach, and in his first season there has led them to a Super Bowl. Unfortunately, not getting the result they wished, though. So it isn't a rebuild. It's a full reset there in Tennessee. They've got the quarterback. They just need to get the other pieces right. And I think we can certainly see an upwards projection of the Tennessee Titans this year, hopefully going towards that plus 500 mark in wins if Cam Ward and Robert Saleh have anything to do with it. So let's move on to the few free agency signings that I really enjoyed this week. Not all have been ticked off yet, but we will start with that one. And I believe David Njoku will be heading to the Baltimore Ravens, I think on probably a 2-year deal, probably in the range of maybe $15 to $18 million, probably about $9 million guaranteed over the two. Look, they've moved on from Isaiah Likely. However, Njoku brings a presence on the tight end position. He's that larger body, more explosive than Mark Andrews. Obviously, Mark Andrews only a year older, but I think David Njoku is the good fit there. To go and get him for relatively cheap as well. Moving on to the Kansas City Chiefs signing Justin Fields there in Kansas. Really like that signing. Eric Bieniemy back in the building there as the offensive coordinator in Kansas. I expect to see a lot of different schemes, including Fields, not because he's a backup, because he has the ability to get outside the pocket. We're not sure how great Patrick Mahomes is going to come back with speed and the ability to run after the ACL, but with the addition of Kenneth Walker and Fields, I really like that sort of where they're going to go potentially with that. Moving on to the 49ers, getting Christian Kirk. Obviously, Kirk most recently at the Houston Texans for that sort of gap year while the Texans were out with the Tank Dell. Again, just gives Brock Purdy an extra weapon, which is certainly needed, especially with more than likely Brandon Ayuk moving on from the 49ers as well. And finally, the biggest one of the week, and that is the Denver Broncos signing Jalen Waddle. Look, they gave up a little bit of draft capital rounds 1, 3, and 4 this year. However, ultimately, I think Denver, with the 30th pick, weren't going to get a player that really made them that much better. So long term, you go and get a Jalen Waddle, a previous first round pick. You pop him into that lineup with Cortland Sutton, with Mims, with RJ Harvey having what I reckon will be a great second year. Hopefully Bo Nix coming back healthy after injury. I really like that signing for both teams, and as well as Miami. It gives them a bit further capital, helps them build out their lineup. Obviously, they've got a lot of dead money this year with them owing so much to Tua, but I think they're in the realm of about $196 million across the board that they're owing to players to get a little bit more capital to bring in some gems that they might find there in the later rounds as well. Certainly something to build around for Malik and Devin Achane down there in South Beach. That brings us to the Power Index, the Sunday Standard Power Index, teams 27 through 23 this week. Here are the teams. I'll put them over here. The teams that we put 32 through 28 last week, but let's get into 27 through 23. Starting off with the New Orleans Saints. Now, I'm still not sold on this organization. They've added a few bits and pieces. Travis Etienne in the running back position is a good get. Obviously, Alvin Kamara has seen a significant dip in his ability to be that explosive running back that he once was, but obviously that comes with age. Do they now use him as sort of trade bait and move him off to get maybe a few more picks back? It's yet to be seen. It will be interesting to see who they go and get with the 8th pick of the NFL draft this year, and I'm still not really sold on the whole Tyler Shoff. Now, look, he really was consistent and played a really good year. I'm still not. I need to see a little bit more. I need to see another half a year, 2/3 of a year to really be sold on him and see him as the organization's future. But we shall wait and see there in New Orleans. Moving on to the 26th team in the Sunday Standard Power Index. We go back to the Titans. Like I've said in the main part of the episode, I really like the way these guys are projecting. They're trending in the right direction, and I certainly see them winning more than 3 games. I certainly see them winning more games than teams such as the New York Jets and the Miami Dolphins. So that's why I've got them sort of at 26, a little bit higher than most boards have them. But I think realistically, that's where they sit. They might be able to go a little bit higher depending on how Campbell comes in on season 2. 25, I've got the Falcons. I really like the addition of Tua. $1.6 million vet minimum. Obviously, Miami picking up the rest of that contract. So it gives you an option to have him start if you're not entirely sure whether Michael Penix Jr. will be back for the start of the season, or it also gives you the ability to get a closer look at Michael Penix. Is he the future, or do you need to start looking towards next year or the year after for the future franchise quarterback that you thought you had in Michael Penix, that I certainly thought was. I really liked him coming out of college. However, a very average rookie season, and following season, however, but we shall wait and see on that front. And then 24 on the Sunday Standard Power Index, I've got the New York Giants. Again, the new coach in John Harbaugh coming in. You've got a new offensive coordinator in Matt Nagy. I think Jackson Dart will again be a really good quarterback and improve on last year. And you've got Neighbors coming back. You've got Scatterboo coming back. I like where this organization is at. They're again rebuilding around Dart. They've got a new coach. Could they climb higher on the index? I think they can, but we'll have to wait and see how Neighbors and Scatterboo come back from injury to see sort of where they sit and also what they're going to do with the 5th pick in the draft. And finally, at the 23rd spot in the Sunday Standard Power Index, I've got the Pittsburgh Steelers. Again, lower than some power standings that I have seen across the internet. However, I like where they're at as an organisation. Pittman and Dowdle are really good signings. Could see them higher than this. However, I will make that decision when we have a decision from Aaron Rodgers. Is he going to come back? Or are they going to put Mason Rudolph? Or are they going to take a shot with Will Howard there? Or do they go and get a player, like I've said on previous episodes, that are available, like a Will Levis, to go under centre there in Pittsburgh? Alrighty, let's finish with picks 16 through 20 in this year's upcoming draft and who I think these teams are going to take in these slots. So let's start off with pick 16. I've got the New York Jets taking Makai Lemon out of UFC, one of the outside of Carnell Tate, I think he's one of the more dynamic receivers. He's a great route runner. He gets separation. He's an immediate impact player. He's a plug and play. Obviously, you still got Garrett Wilson there. I think they go and get another wide receiver. That's something the Jets would do. They could go defensive. I'm not sure, but I think I like Mackay Lemon there. At 16, moving on to number 17. With the 17th pick, I believe the Detroit Lions will go out and they will go and get Monroe Freeling from Georgia, an offensive tackle. Look, Jared Goff was the 8th most sacked quarterback in the league. They've continuously been hit by injury when they should be up there in their sort of contender sort of timeline of the organization. So they need to protect Jared Goff. He's 31. He's still sort of in his prime. So keep him healthy. And you need to do that by building out the offensive lines. It's nothing flashy. It's not going to get another weapon. Obviously, you've lost David Montgomery, but it's not flashy. It's about winning football. Number 18, Minnesota Vikings certainly need help on that secondary, and I have them taking Oregon's Dylan Thieneman there at safety. Great range, great versatility. He will help the defense be more consistent across the board. They've needed the stability for some time there in Minnesota. So number 18, I've got them taking Dylan Thieneman out of Oregon. 19, Bryce Young needs a little bit more help on that offensive line. So I see the Panthers taking Caden Proctor at the 19th pick. He's a big, high upside, high ceiling tackle out of Alabama. He's a long-term investment. You're looking to the future. This is the year that he needs to really prove himself for them to then go out and then spend some big money on, which I think they do. I think they see the future with Bryce Young, but you need to protect him. So I think they go and get, Caden Proctor out of Alabama. And finally, the Dallas Cowboys. I feel like this is going to be a very defensive draft for the Cowboys. If Jerry finally does something right, I think they go and get another Georgia Bulldog. Coming off the board here, had linebacker with CJ Allen. He's fast, aggressive. He can defend sideline to sideline. He's got that Georgia Bulldog pedigree. They breed them down there and they just send them to the NFL and they're instant hits. So they need that speed and that physicality. Obviously, since moving on from Micah Parsons. But yeah, go and get yourself a guy like CJ Allen, who I think is one of the better linebackers in this class. That's episode 4 of the Sunday Standard. Let me know what you think, especially on the Tennessee Titans, because I think they're really building something that people are starting to overlook. We'll keep the Power Index rolling next episode, and I'll keep breaking down the biggest stories from around the league each week. If you enjoyed it, make sure you're following along, and I'll see you in the next one.